WBNE.
Hello, and welcome to episode 44, all about the Muster of Rohan, Chapter 3, Book 5 of the two... Nope. Hello, and welcome to episode 44, all about the Muster of Rohan, Chapter 3, Book 5 of the Return of the King, being the 44th part of That's What I'm Talking About. Hello, my name is Mary Clay. If that's too complicated for you, just call me MC. And today I'm joined by Emmy Neal of So You Want to Read Tolkien, the third and final co-host of the podcast now to join That's What I'm Talking About as a guest. Welcome, Emmy.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I think it was Rachel who said, she was like, yeah, we're like Pokemon. You got to get us all. And now I did. Yeah. Yay.
You did it. You collected all the cards.
Yes. How are you faring during all of this insanity?
I feel bad about how well I am doing, but, you know, I get to, go to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning and wake up at 11, which is my ideal state, instead of, getting up at 7 to go to work. I don't know. It's going well. I've baked a lot of bread. I've been reading a lot of Lord of the Rings, so it's been good.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I'm kind of in a similar boat where I'm like, definitely there are several moments throughout the day where I'm like, I just want to go to Target right now. Or, I just want to leave and go do something, but I can't. But most of the time I'm like, I don't know. It's pretty good. I get to read. I get to play video games. I've baked a lot. This past weekend, I made some banana bread for my parents' wedding anniversary. And I went over to their house to bring it to them. And before I even said anything, my mom was like, "Oh, I'm glad you're here. I have something for you." And she also pulled out banana bread.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And she's like, "Oh, well," I was like, "I also have banana bread for you." She's like, "Oh, well, mine's the chocolate chip banana bread. So mine's more like a cake. It's okay." And I was like, "No, I also made chocolate chip banana bread." So
you are very clearly related.
Yup. Yeah. I tried making lame bus bread a couple weeks ago with a recipe that I got off of TikTok. And
I was going to say, I saw a recipe for it, but I haven't tried it yet. It looked not great. How was it? How did it turn out?
So the recipe I used, I think it was just like a shortbread recipe. It was very it tasted great. However, I'm just not culinarily inclined. I don't even know if that's a word, but I'm very challenged in the kitchen. And so I was trying to roll the dough out and knead it into a cohesive ball of dough, and it was just crumbling everywhere. I didn't have a rolling pin. So I used, I have a steel water bottle, so I used that, and then it stuck to the water bottle because I didn't flour the water, but it was a mess, and I was like,
struggle.
I can't do this. It tasted okay though, so
hey, as long as it tastes good.
I know, right? The only problem is that
I need to bake something other than bread.
I don't think I have the patience for bread because, as I understand it I've also started watching The Great British Bake Off, and
hey, me too.
Oh, good show. And then Emmy and I talked a lot about The Great British Bake Off. We talked about Mel and Sue and how wonderful they are and how there's a dark underbelly to The Great British Bake Off. It's all very shocking. For time constraint reasons, I had to cut this. I have to cut a lot of other audio and content for each episode, which you can find and get access to by becoming a member on Patreon of the 11sies tier. Go to patreon.com/talkingaboutpod to become a member of that tier or any other tiers and get access to extra content.
But okay, wait, we're on the Muster of Rohan, which I actually love this chapter, so I was really excited to get to talk about it.
Okay, good, because when I finished it, I was like, this is kind of a filler
Nothing happened.
chapter. Like, it was
but
definitely Tolkien getting us from point A to point B in the story. Because Tolkien is Tolkien, he can't just be like, 3 days later, Theoden and everyone from Rohan showed up in Minas Tirith. He has to, like, show how they got there, you know? It's not as simple as, like, it was a long 3 days journey, but then they made it. There has to be, like, all the stuff of Mary being sad and then hungry again. And then they have to tell the legend of the paths of the dead. And they have to disrespect Eowyn again. Oops. More anger about Eowyn is going to come through in this chapter, listeners. I apologize, but I also don't apologize.
No, don't apologize. She deserves better. There's a lot of backstory in this, right? They talk about the paths for the dead and the story behind them. And my co-host Caitlin calls it aft-shadowing, right? Like, unlike foreshadowing, where you predict something that's coming, Tolkien in this chapter and a bunch of chapters that follow does aft-shadowing, where he explains things that happened previously in a way that, like, you wish you had that context before. This would have made so much sense.
Oh my God, that's amazing and also perfect.
It's exactly what he does.
Oh, that's
I think
so
one of the reasons
good.
I love this chapter is because it has so many good quotes.
Oh.
So many good quotes in this chapter.
Yeah, definitely. Especially because, like, I'm an Aries Slytherin, so, like, I usually like the macabre things in life. And so when there are these, like, dark lines about, like, and dawn never came and a shadow forever rose over the land, and I'm like, that's amazing. That's
You're like,
great.
I'm here for eternal night.
Yeah, exactly.
See, okay, so I think it's on page 1, actually, is probably my favorite quote of the chapter. It's from Mary's point of view. He's talking about, you know, the, like, 17,000 years it's going to take them to go through this mountain because they've got to move the army, like, one person at a time. And he says he loved mountains, or he had thought he loved them, marching up on the edges of stories brought from far away, but now he was borne down by the unsupportable weight of Middle-earth. And first off, there's a moment of foreshadowing there, but, like, I love that idea of, like, mountains on the edge of stories, like, you've always had them in your imagination, and this is what it's like in real world.
Yeah. It kind of parallels to what Sam and Frodo go through. It's in, I think it's the second to last chapter of Two Towers. Sam and Frodo have this conversation about, like, wow, when we used to hear all of these stories in the Shire about people who go off on grand adventures and they're heroes and everything, you never really think about what it's like to actually be in the story and to be experiencing all of those hardships. And now that we're doing it, it kind of sucks.
I don't like it anymore. It's not such a good story.
So I keep wanting to call this chapter the mustard of Rohan. So, like, if I accidentally say that, that's why. Yeah, so it starts off with Mary and, well, at first I thought it was going to be back with Pippin and everyone in Minas Tirith, because in the very first, like, 2 sentences it says it's kind of describing what Pippin is doing at that time, and then it jumps back to Mary. And so I was a bit confused about halfway through, where I was like, oh, they're in Minas Tirith now, right? And then, like, Eowyn showed up and I was like, oh, I guess they're not in Minas Tirith, because I thought they had met up with Pippin, or they were going to meet up with Pippin, and, like, that's why he introduced Pippin first in the chapter.
I think it was just supposed to be like, you know what Pippin's doing, and at the same time, this is also happening, because they can't do that with Frodo and Sam.
Yeah.
Here's what his other half is doing.
Speaking of which, Mary has a moment to be like, oh, I hope Pippin's okay, and Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli, they've gone off on this, like, awful, perilous journey. And it says, then suddenly, like a cold touch on his heart, he thought of Frodo and Sam. I am forgetting them, he said to himself reproachfully, and yet they are more important than all the rest of us. And I love that they finally get, like, a mention, because throughout all of Two Towers, basically, there's very few moments where the rest of the gang is like, I wonder what our dear pals Frodo and Sam are doing right now. And it's like,
yeah,
oh,
nope.
jeez. So he finally remembers them.
they're the quote-unquote fellowship, but they don't spend a lot of time thinking about each other. You know, they're fellows who are off on all perilous journeys.
That's true. Yeah. I don't think at any point when it's from, like, Aragorn, Legolas, or Gimli's perspective, or even, like, I don't know, Gandalf's perspective, not that we ever really get Gandalf's perspective, but it's very rare where it's like, and then Aragorn wondered what became of Frodo and Sam. All of the big people are like, yeah, this is great, we're fighting a war. And then every now and then Pippin and Merry will be like, I hope my friends are okay. Which is just
They're so soft.
Their Hobbit Hufflepuffy nature.
I would agree.
So this chapter, they are traveling to, I don't know, because I could not locate it on the map. And it makes me so mad. It makes me so mad when Tolkien's like, they went to Harrowdale, and then it's not on the map. And I'm like, okay, I don't know where you are.
It was very important, except, yeah, so Harrowdale is the home of Dunharrow Hall, which is, where Theoden is camping out. I'm assuming it's a fort. I feel like they said that, but I don't have it written down anywhere.
Okay.
So everybody else is stuck outside, and Theoden gets a roof.
Through my map now. See, this is what's confusing is that, so they just came from Helm's Deep, or they're coming from there. Mm-hmm. On one of my maps, it looks like they went past Edoras in order to go to Dunharrow, and I thought they end up at Edoras later. So it's like, why wouldn't you just go to Edoras? It looks like you do a lot of, like, backtracking the way that this map is laid out. So, I don't know. It makes no sense. It's just one of those times where I'm just like, I just have to not care about where they are because I don't know.
Yeah. It's the mountains too, which doesn't help at all. But the way I see it from Helm's Deep, right, you either cut across the Westfold Plains to get to Edoras, or you go through the mountains to get to Dunharrow. And I think they took the mountain path because they wanted to hide the army from the orcs that they knew were spying on Rohan. Did I make that up?
Yeah, that's it.
I'm pretty sure that's what happened.
Hey, your guess is as good as mine. That's, it's like,
all right, as long as we're all lost together.
I'm at a point where I'm like, you know what? That sounds right. Let's go with that.
That happens to me a lot too.
There are a lot of details that I miss, especially when it's like he's describing the landscape and them going from one point to them traveling. And it's just a lot of like, I get very thrown off when there's just like a bunch of names in one paragraph.
Yeah, there's a lot of geography. So we do the best we can.
So they reach Dunharrow, Harrowdale. Sure, they reach one of those places. Harrowdale's in Dunharrow.
Both of those places, in fact.
Okay,
so
great.
Harrowdale is the Great Valley.
Okay.
Between the mountains, and I believe Dunharrow is like the town, the fort that's in it.
So yeah,
because there's a chief of Harrowdale, so I'm pretty sure Dunharrow is not the actual town itself.
Okay, all right. So point is they get there.
They made it.
And they speak to, I guess, a guard or someone who says that, like, oh, yeah, a couple days ago, Gandalf came by on his really cool horse Shadowfax. I love this where they're like, yeah, Gandalf told us to do all of these things, and we did them because it says, Gandalf spoke with great authority. And I just love that it was like Gandalf came in hot and fast, very sure of himself, told them what to do, where he was like, turn off all of the lanterns because now you're just drawing attention to yourself. Help is already on the way, and just like prepare for battle, like telling them like what to do next. And they're like, yeah, we just assumed that he was like, this was word from you. And Theoden's like, yeah, sure. Even though it wasn't really his directions, but he trusts Gandalf now. So.
Oh yeah, no, Dunhere is basically very much just like, was that right? Was that what you wanted us to do? Because we did it. He seemed pretty sure.
Yeah.
And Theoden's just like hands in the air, like, fine, I guess, yes. I know, I love that. I thought that exchange was fantastic.
Yeah. I just love hearing other people talk about Gandalf when Gandalf isn't there. Because when he's Gandalf the Grey, a lot of times it's like, Yeah, man, we hate Gandalf. He's obnoxious and he's awful, and he comes in here and he steals our horses all the god time. Can't stand him. And then now as Gandalf the White, it's like, I mean, he seemed very sure of himself, so we just listened to him without question.
Oh yeah, no, you know what else we gotta talk about Dunharrow? Because, or Harrowdale, I guess, in general, is the creepy statues.
Yeah, what the heck is that up? Is up with that?
I mean, they're standing stones is sort of what I'm picturing, like the size of Stonehenge standing stones. I say that, I've never been to Stonehenge, but like taller than a normal person.
Sure.
And they're of the Pucklemen? How did you pronounce that in your head? Because I didn't listen to an audiobook, so...
Oh, that's right. Because I was like, that sounds like puke. Pukelman.
Yeah.
Pukelman. I don't know. Yeah, it's
I have no idea.
This is when I thought they were like entering Minas Tirith, because Minas Tirith has that like very structured.
That's true. Switchback
design of it. So when he started describing it, I was like, oh, obviously they're Minas Tirith, right? I don't need to read this description. I already know what Minas Tirith looks like. And then it was like, there are all these statues of people who were dead? ?
Like melting statues, right? Like the statues have eroded away and the eyes are hollow, and Mary is the only one who looks at them, which is actually really sad. Like, they carved these huge, gigantic, iconic works of art that are still standing to this day, and no one cares.
Well, I wonder if it's a situation where, like, everyone else has already seen them, and so they're already familiar with them, whereas Mary's seeing it for the first time, so he's like, that's weird. And they're like, oh, the melting demon statues? Nah, that's just normal. That's just, like, what this place looks like.
Like, yeah, picturing, like, a Weeping Angel scenario in which I cannot imagine not watching them as I pass to make sure nothing came out at me.
Don't blink. Don't even blink. Blink and you're dead.
I'm just saying, I would not risk ignoring the haunted statues.
Oh, that would be a good twist if, like, Mary turns around and it's like, and it seemed to Mary that the statues were a little bit closer than they had been before. That would be.
And then I would die.
Oh, nightmare fuel. Oh. So they move along. They pass these Pukelmen.
Yep, something like that.
Yeah. Also, I should mention that they meet and they see like thousands of soldiers, like a full army is here, and right before like Mary's eyes, kind of a situation where like you can look around and be like, wow, there's a lot of people here.
This people.
Is a very like mighty, powerful army.
Yeah, he can't count them, but I don't know if that's because Mary just can't count really that high, or if it's like there are so many people that he can't count them at all, because Theoden doesn't seem that impressed with how many they've gathered.
Mm-hmm. I'm the kind of person where if I were to look into a like crowded room and someone was like, how many people do you think are in here? I could be like, I don't know, 550? 30 people? I don't know. It's like it's either 50 people or 500 people. One of those two. Because I don't know the difference. Like I don't know what 10 bodies in a room looks like.
Especially not these days. We've been home for too long.
This is true. Yeah. Oh, also at the end of the first chapter of this book, they make a point of being like, oh, there were at least 3,000 soldiers, kind of implying that like even that isn't enough, because that's how big and mighty and powerful Sauron's forces are going to be. That 3,000 soldiers isn't going to be enough to fight. And they're going to need more than that. So I think that's kind of like a similar thing here where Theoden's like, maybe he's not impressed because he's like, yeah, this is what my army should look like. This is what I expected of them. Or he's like, this isn't going to get us very far. We just have to like cross our fingers and hope that this massive army will defend us and we won't all die here.
Yeah, but he's making plans for that. Oh, Theoden.
I know, yeah. So throughout this chapter, there's a lot of instances of Theoden, like he said goodbye to Eowyn for what he expected to be the last time, and like small things like that, where I'm also kind of expecting Theoden to die. I'm pretty sure that he will die, just because I think he's like He's too cool to live. He's too good of a dude to live.
They've definitely like hammered that in though. Like, I'm prepared to die. It's like, okay, dude, shut up.
Yeah.
Like, we get it. Stop being morbid.
Speaking of deaths, so I was looking at the table of contents and reading the titles of the chapters in this book because I was having to like plan stuff out and trying to like schedule guests and stuff. And one of the names of the chapters is The Pyre of Denethor, Pyre, which is when you put a dead body on a boat and you ship it off and then you light it on fire ceremoniously.
Very Viking.
Yes, exactly. And it says The Pyre of Denethor. I was like, okay, I'm assuming that means Denethor dies in probably the chapter beforehand because it's a battle. The Battle of the Pelennor Fields.
Yeah, also a great chapter.
Yeah, so I was like, good job, Tolkien. And, you know, of course, I'm a humble person. I like to think, no, I'm not at all. But I will eat my words. I will admit if I was wrong when I get to that chapter, if Denethor doesn't die. But I was like, really, Tolkien? You're going to ruin your own book with the names of your chapters? Like, can we maybe choose some better names for your chapters here that don't give things away?
So I can tell you right now, he could not have picked a better name for that chapter.
Okay.
You don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be good.
And then also, while I'm talking about the chapter titles, this is now my prediction for how this book will go, for how this thing is going to go down.
Okay.
Based on the names of the chapters in book 6, it looks like they destroy the ring in chapter 3 of book 6, and then it continues on for another 100 pages, which honestly, given what I know about Tolkien thus far, does not surprise me. So I will just have to see what happens. But it looks like, because the names of the chapters are The Tower of Cirith Ungol, The Land of Shadow, Mount Doom.
Dun dun dun.
And then The Field of Cormalin, sure. The Steward and the King. I'm assuming the king is Aragorn, given the name of the book. Many Partings. I'm assuming after Aragorn has been crowned king, they all leave.
Homeward Bound.
Homeward Bound, and then after the scoring of the Shire. I don't know how to say that word.
I think it's scouring.
And then the Grey Havens. So just the fact that it's like many partings, Homeward Bound, Shire. I'm like, okay, so obviously by many partings, it's still like halfway through ending. Anyway, so that's just like my latest update for like predictions for what's to come. But I was just laughing because Tolkien just seems to give a lot away with the names of his chapters.
Yeah, he's definitely not what you would call a subtle person.
You don't say.
In that sense. But also, I think you've brought up a really good point that this is really a character-motivated book, right? It is grounded very specifically in these points of view. And just because, I mean, okay, spoiler, yeah, they're going to destroy the ring. I think we all knew that, literally.
Yes.
The entire point of this book. Forever. Mm-hmm. When they destroy the ring, like, okay, it's the end of the movie, but there's still, like, a lot to these characters that they have to go through before we can close out the story.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in my mind now, I'm relating it to how Parks and Rec ends.
I've never seen that show.
So the like series finale, it like follows each of the characters and it does a bunch of like flash forwards to show what they are doing with their life after like quote unquote the like story of the show ends. Because these are characters that like we've fallen in love with and they're very likable and everyone just loves these people and it's always, you know, hard to say goodbye to them. So it follows and it shows like they're gonna be okay, you know, these two are gonna have a kid and this person's gonna be president or you know, whatever, and to try and like give closure so that we can feel like our characters, our people are taken care of.
It hurts. It's gonna hurt so good. So wait, we were at the Paths of the Dead. We took a long tangent, but we gotta double back to the drama portion, in which Aragorn is just so extra.
Oh my god, Aragorn.
He's not even here, and everybody's like rolling their eyes at him.
God, yes. They meet up with Eowyn, and I was like, oh my god, Tolkien, look at you feminist, bringing in a female character 2 chapters in a row. Oh my God.
Little did you know.
Woman power. Wow. The future is female. Sorry. Anyway, so they meet up with Eowyn and they can tell that something's wrong. And this is how I'm reading it, is she's playing it off that she's upset because Aragorn has gone off on this perilous journey to the paths of dead. And she's upset because it's pretty much certain death. And obviously they care for Aragorn. And so she's sad because he's going to die. However, I'm reading this as if she is pissed off because she asked Aragorn several times to come with them and he said no. And so that's what's actually going on in her mind, is her being like, I'm going to have to bury all of this sexism and like rage against the patriarchy internally. I'm going to have to internalize all of this and bottle it up. And then at just the right moment, I will release my rage into the world. But anyway, so Theoden says, is all well with you? All is well, she answered. Yet it seemed to Mary that her voice belied. Sure, I think that's that word. Belied her. And he would have thought that she had been weeping, if that could be believed of one so stern of face. All is well. It was a weary road for the people to take, torn suddenly from their homes. There were hard words, for it is long since war has driven us all from the green fields, but there have been no evil deeds. Amber says, oh, have you seen Aragorn? She said, no, he is gone. Whither did he... Oh, and she gets like dramatic. She turns and looks at the mountains. Whither did he go? Asked Éomer. I do not know, she answered. He came at night and rode away yestermorn. Ere the sun had climbed over the mountaintops, he is gone. And she said, he has passed into the shadow from which none have returned. I could not dissuade him. He is gone. And they've gone off to the paths of the dead, which everyone is like, oh crap, that's not good.
Yeah, classic move, Aragorn, honestly.
There's a great moment where Mary is able to he's able to like sit by himself and like kind of think things through. My notes for this are really funny because I have one bullet note that says, "Oh, poor Mary," because he's sitting there. He thinks, they have all left me now. They have all gone to some doom. Gandalf and Pippin to war in the east, Sam and Frodo to Mordor, and Strider and Legolas and Gimli to the paths of the dead. So he's just like, they all left me.
I know.
Followed by one of the most Pippin, like, Hobbit thing, or who is this? Mary, one of the most Hobbit things ever.
This is, peak Hobbit.
In the midst of these gloomy thoughts, he suddenly remembered that he was very hungry. Oh, I love it, where he's like, oh my God.
He goes in search of food.
I was so busy being sad, I almost forgot I was starving.
Oh, see, and I also think of it as, like, I'm dwelling on all of these super depressing thoughts, and what's also depressing is I'm hungry.
I'm gonna go get food immediately. Oh my God.
He's a good egg.
Made me laugh a lot. So this is when he joins everyone as they're, like, having a feast. And this is when they go into, as you guys call it, a aft-shadowing? Is that what it was?
Yep.
And
we get a moment of aft-shadowing.
Which is also what I refer to as a tangential history lesson, where Tolkien just breaks off and is like, I'm going to tell you a little history tale. However, I don't mind it here because it, to me at least, I don't know if you got a similar vibe. It feels like they're sitting around a campfire telling a ghost story almost.
Yeah, no, definitely has that vibe. And I think it's like the casual, quiet, certain death and also the eternal night hovering over them. They've got feelings.
Yeah, nothing like certain death just looming over you to add a little atmosphere. A little ambiance to your meal. So they talk about the paths of the dead because Mary has never heard of it. Theoden says, folks say that the dead men out of the dark years guard the way and will suffer no living man to come to their hidden halls. But at whiles they may themselves be seen passing out of the door like shadows and down the stony road. And they tell this story. Oh, and then Eowyn mentions Aragorn And she says, greatly changed he seemed to me since I saw him first in the king's house. Grimmer, older, fey, I thought him, and like one whom the dead call.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yep.
Again with the macabre.
Yeah, and this is what I have dubbed Aragorn's emo phase. Where, so in the previous chapter, he goes off by himself and like sequesters himself somewhere, and he looks into the Palantir, and in my mind, he comes out and he's like put eyeliner on. And he's like, we have to go to the paths of the dead or else we're all gonna die. And they're like, you okay, bro? And he's like, no, we're all gonna die. It's not as fun for him anymore, you know?
No, I do think that sounds exactly like what happened.
So they start talking about this tale of the paths of the dead. And in their little like folklore, the last person who went to it was Baldur, son of Brego my ego.
Hey, let go of my ego.
That was dumb. Yeah, so Brego and his son Baldur went there, and it was guarded. There was this like old shriveled man sitting outside of it, who I wonder if it was Isildur who it is because I know nothing about Isildur, really, and like the lore and the history of like what happened to him after everything.
Okay, he gets murdered.
Oh, okay, then never mind.
Right,
I didn't know how he died.
He was definitely dead. The ring leaves him and he dies. That was back in, I can't remember when.
Because what we know about the Paths of the Dead and like this dead army is that it was this army that was supposed to fight with Isildur and they didn't. And so he cursed them to never fully rest until they fought for the heir of Isildur, and that's why Aragorn went to go get them and awake them. So I thought this old man who was sitting there, because it says, on the threshold sat an old man, aged beyond guess of years, tall and kingly he had been, but now he was withered as old stone. So the fact that it said like tall and kingly, I was like, maybe it was Isildur, because it was like he was a man of like great importance and whatnot, and now he's sitting there as his like last, I don't know, his last thing of being like, I'm gonna stop people from going in there or something. I don't know, but now we know that theory is wrong, absolutely. So he says, this way is shut. It was made by those who are dead, and the dead keep it until the time comes. That way is shut. And Baldur says, and when will that time be? And then very conveniently, this withered old man dies.
Yes. Actually, in fact, face plants on the ground.
Yeah, he just fell upon his face and died.
I love it. Okay, so I've Googled, and the internet calls him the way is shut guy. So that's really helpful. That's good.
All
for
right,
us.
fantastic.
That really clears it up.
So what Tolkien just really does a lot is there are a lot of times where I'm like, maybe I'll find out more about this later, and then I never do. Where that happened, especially I was going through maybe like old tweets or something, or I don't know, something where it was the chapters with when Treebeard is introduced, and I was like, man, I can't wait for the Entwives to show up, and then it's like they're not coming.
Whoops.
Ever. Oh, there was a great meme. Plug for the Facebook group. If you're not a part of it, you should go join it. Just search for That's What I'm Talking About community group on Facebook. You do have to answer questions in order to get in, but that's literally just so I can know that you're not a bot.
I was going to say, wait, do they have to answer trivia questions? Is there like a threshold?
It's like, what's your favorite Lord of the Rings character?
Oh, darn. I guess that makes sense.
But anyway, someone shared and was like, since quarantine, dolphins have returned to Italy. Meanwhile, in Middle-earth, the Entwives have returned. I knew they'd show up just when it was convenient for them, you know?
If only. Classic.
Man. Yeah, so all they know about the Paths of the Dead is that way is shut, and it will be shut until the time comes. And I'm assuming the time has come, and that's what Aragorn is doing. So, if not, that would be real awkward if it's not the time yet, you know?
It's true.
So, in the midst of this little, like, ghost story folklore time, a soldier of Gondor bursts in, and it says, for a moment, it seemed to, this is from Mary's perspective, for a moment, it seemed to him that Boromir was alive again and had returned. And I panicked for a moment, thinking that Boromir was actually alive all this time.
If only. No, I took this moment to be both really funny, but also, like, the slightly racist, all men look the same. Which is true. Okay, it is true. Yeah. It's just also really funny.
So the reason that Mary is like, oh my god, it's Boromir, is because it's a soldier of Gondor. He's wearing the same like clothes and uniform. He has the same kind of look and build as Boromir. Obviously, it's not because Boromir is dead.
Whoops.
And he comes bearing a message of dire emergency from Rohan. Wait, no, from Gondor. I was like, wait, where's
he was looking for Rohan.
I was like, where are they? Where did you come from? Where did you go?
Where did you come from, Cotton Eye Joe?
Anyway, and he has a red arrow in his hands, which is a very like old message that hasn't been used in forever, which shows like how dangerous and dire the situation is that Gondor needs Rohan's help. Theoden says, of course, we'll help you. I'll send 6,000 of my best men and they will be there in a week. And this guy's like, we will be dead by then. So thanks for that.
I love this exchange because, he's very much like, we'll all be dead by then. You can revenge our corpses. And Theoden's like, all right, we'll revenge your corpses. Sure. Not like, we're going to go faster so we can get there in time. He's just like, yep.
Yeah.
We'll get there when we get there.
A week, if it must be so, it must. But you are like to find only ruined walls in 7 days from now, unless other help unlooked for still comes. Still, you may at the least disturb the orcs and swarthy men from their feastings in the White Tower.
Ugh, racism.
Yeah. And Theoden's like, now, let's all sleep on it, right? We'll all make better decisions in the morning. But morning never came.
Dun, dun, dun.
Mary goes to bed, sounding very much like a little kid, and it's like so funny and cute. I won't be left behind to be called for on return, said Mary. I won't be left, I won't. And repeating this over and over again to himself until he fell asleep at last in his tent.
Poor baby.
Poor bud.
Definitely they're gonna try to leave him behind. So close.
Yeah.
I love when he shows up with the red arrow. Also because what the heck? Like, yeah, here's one symbolic red arrow. What if this messenger had been killed on the way and then they lost the red arrow? And then there was no red arrow to deliver to Theoden to signify that this message is in fact important, which, like, that's just so stupid. What, he's going to ignore every other message you send that's like, please, we need help, we're desperate? And he's like, but it doesn't have the red arrow, so
maybe
you must not
it's a red arrow so that, like, let's say he was on his way to Rohan and he was like, oh my god, there's an army of orcs coming right for me. And so he shoots the arrow off towards Rohan. Ooh, I'm imagining it like in Hunger Games when Katniss is doing her test and she shoots the arrow and it goes through the apple in the pig's mouth to get their attention.
Hey, who ordered this pig? Who ordered this pig? Hey.
Thank you for your consideration.
And everyone's sitting there in the tent enjoying their feast, and then all of a sudden this red arrow comes like flying down and goes right into their roast ham. And they're like, oh, that's a message from Gondor. We gotta go.
Totally. That sounds, yes, entirely realistic. That's what it's for. You're right. Suddenly it's not stupid anymore.
I don't know what Tolkien was thinking here. Clearly, I write a better version of Lord of the Rings than he did, so...
Indeed. I just, like, it's a great dramatic moment, but, like, if you think about it for more than 2 seconds, you're like, wait, this makes no sense. That's not how politics works.
I don't think he came alone. I think it was him and a group of people from Gondor, maybe, and maybe he was just the only one to come in the tent.
No, he is, yeah, but there's only one red arrow. This is the thing I'm fixated on.
Just the one arrow.
There's just the one, and they exchange back and forth. So here's the thing now. Rohan has the red arrow, which means Gondor's not allowed to, need help again until Rohan needs help first.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean.
They take turns being in dire straits, because that's how the world works.
It's like a IOU basically. Yeah. Okay, I see what you mean. I mean, they're also at a point now where it's like, it's not gonna matter if you don't come to fight with us because we'll all be dead and destroyed by then. So like, it doesn't matter who has the red arrow at that point. Like, we'll all be dead.
The orcs will have the red arrow, I guess, technically.
Yeah, I guess. So in the morning, someone comes to wake him up and he calls him Master Hobbitla, which to me sounds like he's saying like Hobbit, like Hobbitla, but with like a Romanian or Russian accent or something. Hobbitla. No, and will, the sun has not risen yet, said Mary. No, and will not rise today, Master Hobbitla. Nor ever again. Yeah, that's exactly it. So I was like, okay, I'm assuming Hobbitla is like a word that they've now invented in Rohirrim for hobbit. Yeah, Mary notes that like, it's not sunrise yet. And he says, no, and it will not rise today, Master Hobbitla. Never again, one would think under this cloud. But time does not stand still, though the sun be lost. Make haste. So they're now in this impenetrable darkness and everything is awful.
Really, it sets our situation into context, doesn't it? Like, at least we have sunlight. They have eternal night.
That's true.
Could be worse. And no Wi-Fi.
So...
And then we get to sadness.
Oh my god. They start packing up and get ready to go. And Mary's like, I am not going to be left behind. I pledged my service to you. I'm going to fight. I am not just a child. I'm going to fight. And Theoden's like, okay, little boy, I guess you can fight. Eowyn, you're a perfectly capable soldier. You're going to stay here.
Well, right, because he doesn't take Mary with him.
No, he does at first because they ride off, and then when they get to Edoras, he makes Mary get off and stay there.
Because he says none of his soldiers can bear him as a burden. I release you from my service, but not from my friendship.
That's later on. Mary insists that he's gonna come with them, and Theoden's like, okay, you can come with me for now. It's really good. Mary says, it is a long way to run, but run I shall, if I cannot ride, even if I wear my feet off and arrive weeks too late. I love that. Like stubborn, like cute stubbornness of Mary.
It's so sad. Yeah.
Being so like dedicated to this. And then Eowyn says that she has like gathered up some kind of armor for him because that was what Aragorn told her to do. She was like, or they were like, hey, you're going to be getting a really small soldier in a couple days. Can you try and find some adequate armor for him?
Well, here's the thing. Did Aragorn ask her to do that? I don't think he did. I'm pretty sure he just off into the paths of the dead.
Right. I don't remember him saying it, but maybe that was just something that like Tolkien didn't write him saying, because like they sit down and they have a meal together, so maybe he mentioned it in that meal, but Tolkien didn't write that as like a piece of his dialogue. I don't know, because Eowyn says, I will show you the gear that I prepared for you. This request only did Aragorn make to me, that you should be armed for battle. I have granted it as I could, for my heart tells me that you will need such gear ere the end.
So it's possible that Aragorn asked. I don't think he did, because as we mentioned before, Aragorn hasn't spent a lot of time thinking about the hobbits. I think Eowyn puts this together for Mary, because like her, she knows that Mary desperately wants to go off to war.
Oh.
I mean, there's no way to know if that's true, but that's what I think.
That's like a really interesting read of her.
I feel so bad for her.
I know, right.
Right? She knows what it feels like to be told that she has to stay behind. And one of the things that they're going to use against Mary is that Mary doesn't have adequate armor. And so, wait a second, he does. Next reason.
So she arms him as best she can and sends him off with everyone as they ride to Edoras. And then at one point, I guess they like get to a point where they can pause, and Mary looks around at the crowd at the army. I almost said the crowd of soldiers. That's called an army. Good job. He looks around like at the army. He makes eye contact with a young man, Mary thought, as he returned the glance, less in height and girth than most. He caught the glint of clear gray eyes, and then he shivered, for it came suddenly to him that it was the face of one without hope who goes in search of death. Damn, that's dark.
It's so sad. Yeah.
And then they sing,
Yeah.
and then they sing a song that's also not exactly a hopeful song. It's like
I know, right?
the
I need to
last
learn
couple.
new tunes.
Honestly, though, so the song is about them like marching off to war, and the last couple lines say, "Doom drove them on, darkness took them, horse and horseman, hoofbeats afar, sank into silence, so the songs tell us." Yep. Oh, and it was indeed in a deepening gloom that the king came to Edoras. So they're just like the most depressing army you ever done seen.
Yes.
And this is where Theoden is like, okay, Mary, I applaud you for your loyalty and your bravery. That's great. However, there is no way you can fight in battle. You are tiny. You will get killed. You can't even ride a horse on your own. And you would just slow down anyone else if you rode with them. So I'm sorry, but you have to stay here in Edoras, and we're going to go off to battle. And and that's when he says that great line of,
I release you from your service, but not
Yeah.
from my friendship. Yeah, so I don't think Theoden says it quite as condescending as that, but I do think it's like, Mary, if the war was here at Edoras, you could fight in it, but we have to ride, we have to canter hundreds of miles on huge war horses, and you cannot keep up. And none of my riders, none of their horses will be able to bear you as a burden, which is just,
I don't think it's like, oh, Theoden is being condescending towards him. That was just like me simplifying it of being like, Mary, honey, you are a tiny child. You cannot fight in this battle. And it's cute that you think you can. Maybe someday when you're older, when you're bigger, I don't know.
oh,
So everyone goes off, and then, what's this here? Unnoticed, a rider came up and spoke softly in the hobbit's ear. Where will wants not, a way opens, so we say, he whispered. And so I have found myself. Mary looked up and saw that it was the young rider whom he had noticed in the morning. The rider says, "Hi, I'm Durnhelm," or so we believe, maybe. I don't know about that. Do you want me to take you? We can go together. Here, hop on my horse. I'll take you.
Okay, but it's the opposite of that, because it's like, get on my horse, I can take you. And Mary's like, okay, but wait, what's your name? And he's like, oh, Durnhelm.
Yeah.
Right? It's like everything else in the conversation happens first. Totally forgets the like introduction.
Yeah.
Mary's like, I don't even know your name. And they're like, you can call me Durnhelm.
Yeah.
Super casual.
Tolkien makes sure to mention a couple times, Durnhelm was less in weight than many men, though lithe and well knit in frame. Interesting that this mysterious rider, who is much smaller than the average man, showed up right after they left Eowyn by herself. Interesting.
Yep. I wonder.
Obviously, what I'm getting at here is that, to me, it seems very obvious that this is Eowyn in disguise. And it makes me laugh because I'm like, Mary, you are so dumb. How do you not recognize that it is Eowyn?
Tolkien is not subtle.
How do you not recognize? Because
Not recognize her face, not recognize the voice.
They make direct eye contact, and they have like a full conversation when she is Eowyn. And then when she is Durnhelm, I'm assuming, they make direct eye contact, because there was that moment that I read out a couple minutes ago where it's like he makes eye contact with someone who has a total look of determination in their eyes and doesn't care if they live or die. And then here it is of Mary being like, oh, interesting, a random soldier just showed up to help me.
How convenient.
Oh my God.
What a conveniently located random soldier who is very helpful.
Oh, it just makes me, and like, I understand there's no way that Tolkien could know about a lot of like cliches and fantasy and sci-fi and stuff, but it's definitely a cliche of like a girl puts her hair into a hat and suddenly everyone is like, oh, that's a man.
I mean, obviously. It's a cliche because he wrote it, but also like it's a straight up trope. Thanks, Shakespeare.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Oh my God. That's another one that is so dumb. And this is maybe there's only like a small section of people who care about this, but in Twelfth Night, when frickin' Viola dresses up as Sebastian, and it's like, how do we not make this connection?
I don't know what you're talking about. Amanda Bynes was very convincing.
Oh yeah, she's the man. Oh, that's a great movie.
That was so good.
It's
She's
a
the
great
Man was
movie.
phenomenal. It was a work of art, in fact.
The father podcast of this podcast, Bacon and Eggs, they reviewed She's the Man, and it's currently like towards the bottom of their ranking, and I was like, how dare you? So these are now like two of my best guy friends, and I'm like,
I am
but you
so
don't
offended.
get it. You never went to a sleepover where you watch She's the Man, because like that's the context that I have for it, is like this was a go-to sleepover movie for like literally through college.
It's just funny and harmless.
It's a good movie. It's
Which
a
is
good movie.
rare.
And the ending where they're doing the soccer game and it's set to Dirty Little Secret by All American Rejects. It's good. Anyway. So the chapter ends with Durnhelm, Eowyn, and Mary riding off into the sunset, except for, just kidding, there is no sun. It's only darkness. Just kidding. They join the army is what happens.
They do. Yeah. The last paragraph of this chapter is so good.
I already
so
closed
good.
my book. What is the last?
Okay.
The last...
I don't know what that
crap,
is.
I already closed it.
Wait. And so Theoden, take 3.
English is hard, especially the
English
way that
is
Tolkien
so
wrote
hard.
it. It's unfair.
We're gonna get there, guys. And so King Theoden departed from his own realm, and mile by mile the long road wound away, and the Beacon Hills marched past, Calenhad, Min Rimmon, Ereless, Nardal, but their fires were quenched. All the lands were grey and still, and ever the shadow deepened before them, and hope waned in every heart. Talk about ending on a downer.
Yeah. That's like literally how
so
every
good.
chapter in this book has ended so far. Because chapter 1 ended with, the darkness has begun, there will be no dawn. And then
Yeah, that was
chapter
deep.
2 ended with, the next day there came no dawn, and the Grey Company passed on into the darkness of the storm of Mordor and were lost to mortal sight, but the dead followed them. And then here we have, and hope waned in every heart. So I think it's safe to say no one's having a good time right now.
Yeah, no, I think we've arrived at the suffering portion of the hero's journey.
Yeah, definitely. I would say we kind of started that with the later half of Two Towers when it transitions to Frodo and Sam and Gollum. I was like, who are all these characters? When they get to Mordor and it's just awful. Now it's like, all right, it's everyone else's turn to be miserable.
Pretty much, that's where we are.
Well, that brings us to the end of the chapter and
we
basically
did
the
it.
end of the episode. Emmy, where can people find you on the internet?
Nowhere. I live in a hole. No, I'm kidding. Okay. So, guys, you can come and listen to So You Want to Read Tolkien pretty much every major podcast distributor. You can find us on Twitter at To Read Tolkien. You can find me on Twitter at Epic Emmy. And you can find us on the internet at youwanttoreadtolkien.com.
And then this is something that I think I've forgotten to ask my past couple of guests, so I apologize for that. But anyway, is there something that you would recommend to others, to listeners of this show who are like fantasy, Lord of the Rings minded, something like a movie, a TV show, a book, or something that you enjoy?
Well, I'm a librarian, so the short answer is yes, and the long answer is how much time do you have? Okay, no, so I have recently finished Naomi Novik's. She has a book coming out this September, hopefully, if, this pandemic doesn't go too deep into summer. It's called A Deadly Education, which is basically like if Hogwarts was full of a lot more carnivorous monsters, like more than it currently has. And basically, like, you go to school and you're not allowed to leave until you graduate or you die, in which case, obviously, like, you don't leave. But the school feeds on people. And that sounds super dark, and it is, but it was really good. And she has 2 other fantasy novels. One is called Uprooted, and one is called Spinning Silver. And they're these phenomenal, I would say Eastern European, Polish is her ethnicity, Polish fairy tales. And Spinning Silvers particularly is like a Jewish retelling of Rumpelstiltskin, except better than I'm making it sound. Man, talking about books is hard.
My brain was like connecting the dots of like, oh, right, Rumpelstiltskin. That's the tale about like the girl who had to spin straw into gold. Okay, Spinning Silver. I got it. My like last two brain cells connecting those dots. Yeah. That's What I'm Talking About is a proud member of WB&E. You can learn more about that by going to WBNE.org. Good Lord, my brain. You should also listen to our newest addition to the network, Late to the Party. It's been a month, I think, maybe more. I don't know how much time has passed since it launched. So it's really kicking off and has got a great story going, and it's very fun, and you should listen to it.
In a world not unlike our own.
It is a balmy 80 degrees in Miami, Florida.
I don't recall there being tieflings in Miami.
Now you know that hammer toss isn't an actual hammer, right?
It is in this universe.
Okay.
No, it's a big ol' hammer.
It's a big old sledgehammer.
Where magic and monsters run rampant.
Oh, Jordan has showed us a diagram of, I think, Red Eye's Black Dragon from the Yu-Gi-Oh!
Oh
series.
my god.
Well, I speak Infernal, so
A real estate agent.
Lily Davis sells real estate by day.
A football coach.
I love you. Don't touch my flowers.
A failed actor.
I am a former Broadway star.
And a teenager.
Sunny days, a student in college, crazy, right?
Must save the world.
And you're waving your clipboard back and forth, and
Do I feel my clipboard connect with something?
yes.
Coming March 23rd to WBNE. Late to the Party.
The cover art is by Graphite, aka Vaishon Brandon. You can support him on Instagram at graphite.vmb. You can find the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at TolkienAboutPod. And you can also join the Facebook group, which will be linked in the description. You can find me on Twitter at MCWatsup and Instagram at MCTurnDownForWhat. The sponsor for this week's episode is Mayor. At least I hope I'm saying that right, because you are a new sponsor. Yay! Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. I appreciate your support. It means a lot to me, so thank you for doing that. If you want to be a sponsor of the podcast or join another tier, you can do that by going to patreon.com/TolkienAboutPod. I know URLs. And there is a new way that you can show your support for That's What I'm Talking About on WBNE.org. It's called a super shout out. And this is a one-time payment for me to say whatever you want me to say on the show, within reason, obviously, because I have morals and standards. But there are options available for both individuals and businesses. So if you want to tell your girlfriend who listens to the podcast that you love her for the first time ever, oh boy, that's a really high standard for me to say. You can do that with a super shout out. If you have a small business, maybe you're an artist who is selling prints virtually because of all of this horribleness, and you want me to help promote your art, you can do that with a super shout out. Maybe you just want to say that bagels are the best breakfast food, which I disagree with. I believe that's waffles, but I will say that if you get a super shout out, you can do that at WBNE.org and click on the link in the top right to get your super shout out and send it on its way to me. So a couple weeks ago, the discussion question was, what was the last time there was the finale, the final piece of a series, a franchise, or whatever that you were really excited about? A lot of people said Game of Thrones, that they were really excited for that finale. Immediately followed by like, well, I was really excited about Game of Thrones, and it was awful.
It was so good, and then I don't know what happened.
A lot of other people said they were excited for the Rise of Skywalker. I haven't seen that, so I don't know. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, Star Wars.
Yeah.
Woohoo.
I love Star Wars. There were some things in The Rise of Skywalker that I loved, and then there were some things where I was like, they really just picked the lowest hanging plot fruit they could. They weren't that creative, which is disappointing.
Samuel on Facebook said that a finale that really was satisfying and did really good job, which I wholeheartedly agree with, is the Good Place finale. That was amazingly well done. I don't know if I've ever said it before on this pod. Like, I've said it before to multiple other people, but in my mind, The Good Place is an example of a very perfectly to a T crafted and created show where they weren't just being renewed over and over again and having to come up with new stories to drag it out. They had a cohesive story that they set out to tell, and they told it, and the finale absolutely crushed me.
The wave returns to the ocean, where it came from.
I love that.
So that's fun. One more. Taylor in Discord said Allegiant, which is the final book of the Divergent series. And I was like, oh my God, yes. So I read the first 2 Divergent books like a couple months before the final one was going to be released. The first 2 books are really great. It's a great, like, there's a reason they made it into a movie. It's a good story. And then the last book is god awful and ruins it all. So
well, so from a structure standpoint, 1, I agree with you, but 2, anytime you have a series where one character has the entire POV and then in the last book you're like, this other character has a POV because they're important, you're like, no, it's because the other one's gonna die.
yeah.
We know. You're not, that's not subtle.
Like,
we know.
For anyone who has not read the Divergent books,
Skip
to give
them.
you like a point of view of how bad Allegiant was, is they just didn't make the movie. They like very unnecessarily split it into 2 parts, I think, or something. I don't know. But it didn't end the way that the book ended, and I was like, that's not right. And then I walked out of the theater and looked it up, and it was like, a part 2 will be coming soon, and then they just never made it. Because that's how bad it was.
Yeah, it didn't make any money.
Yeah, they were planning to do like a made-for-TV thing for it even, and even that didn't work out. So anyway.
They set the bar really low and still dropped it.
So thank you to everyone who provided your answers to that question. This week's discussion question is, I don't know. I couldn't come up with one. And I asked right before I hopped on our Skype call to record, I was in a Google Hangout with fans of Bacon and Eggs podcast, and we were having a Google Hangout, and I was like, hey guys, what should be the discussion question for this? And they said, what's your favorite condiment? Because I said mustard of Rohan. So that's all I got. Do you have a suggestion for a better discussion question?
Oh God. All I can think of are like, have you baked any bread? No, I cannot think of anything.
You know what? Everyone just tell us like what foods you're eating. Let's just do that. There we go. Because Mary is like us, and he's surrounded by all this gloom and doom, and he's sad and depressed. And you know what he did? He went to eat his feelings away. So tell me what you're eating these days, okay?
Yes. No, that's great. That's perfect.
That's the question. That's the question. So, yeah.
Love it.
I will do my best to post that question on all of the social medias. Sometimes I'm not good at posting on all of the social medias, so that's just why you should be a part of all of them, because you never know which one I'm going to post about on.
Never know where you're going to be.
Exactly, right. Do you have any parting words for the listeners?
Stay healthy, stay safe, stay home. That's really it.
And that's what I'm talking about.